Finance Committee meeting of March 19th. We have guests from the schools here since we're talking about going over school budgets. We have Megan Cannon from the local school committee, and we have Mark from the Silver Lake School Committee. The first thing on the agenda is there anybody from the public who wants to make any comments before we get started? I see that Derek just joined us online. Welcome, Derek.
Tim's there.
Okay, Debbie, you're there too. I hope everything's going well with you, Derek, and your new family.
Yeah, he's sitting right next to me right now, so we have an extra person attending our meeting, just not moving.
Nice.
Excellent. Deb, good to see you. I don't see any comments from the public, so we'll move on. I think the first thing we'll do is, since we have a couple of people here from the schools, we don't want to keep them any later than we have to. So we'll start talking a bit about the school budget. As most of you know here, between myself and town administration, the school committees and the school administrations, we've done a lot of work over the last 3 months or so in getting to a budget that the town, the Board of Selectmen, and myself believe is acceptable. As you all know, we started off with some pretty significant increases. To refresh you, right now, where the budget that we're looking at, KES, KIS, the local budget, is up by $1,028,000, 7.1%. That's a total of $15,597,000. The Silver Lake assessment is at $17,174,000 to the town of Kingston. That's up $430,000 or 2.6%. Bottom line, education is $32,771,000, up $1,458,000 or 4.7% consolidated. You've all heard me say it before. I wish there was more people from the public here. I think that Kingston has done a very good job over the years in funding education budgets. Every time we talk about having to have a dollar reduction, we have a lot of the public hollering and screaming that we're not being fair to the students, we're not being fair to the youths. Over the last 10 years that I've been involved, the town of Kingston has funded education at over 5%. We all know that the intent of real estate taxes should not be going up more than 2.5% to 4%. So we do, in fact, fund education very well. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pass out some handouts that I've used. I want to have other members here get a general understanding of what goes on in the budget process for the local schools first. So that I'm going to give you two things, a detailed budget and a couple of analyses that is prepared by the administration at the school. The first package that I sent out to you, it came right out of the school committee meeting. The original, the budget that has been prepared, what I call the gross budget for the Kingston Elementary and Intermediate School that I just mentioned, $17,056,596. If you go to the detail, okay, that I provided, the actual budget itself, you'll see a bottom line of that 17,056. So what that's intended to do, we're not gonna go through this in much detail right now. It allows you to have an opportunity to look at the types of costs and where the money is being spent. Okay, for instance, the first page, Department 1210, that's the allocation of the superintendent's salary to our local schools, okay? Between superintendent salary, clerical, and miscellaneous, that's over $90,000. Finance and operations, okay? That comes down to, they don't have totals here, but that's about 160,000. One of my reasons for bringing these comments up, since I've been involved here, I have not seen a lot of discussion at school committee meetings, at Board of Selectmen meetings, or at finance committee meetings about specifics, okay? And granted, none of us, selectmen, finance committee, have any authority, anything over line items in the budget. But we certainly have, I think, somewhat of a responsibility to ask questions occasionally. So that I'm putting this out there to kind of get us ready. One of the things that our school committee chair here has mentioned of getting a group together where we start talking about budgets, you know, a year in advance, and every couple of months or something. And these are the types of things where I think we can dig in a little bit deeper and understand what we do. So right now, that's all I wanted to talk about, the detailed budgets.
Can I ask you a quick question about
Certainly.
these? This does not include Kingston's portion of the shared cost budget from Union 31 for the district level, right? Or does it?
It does, yes, in effect, I think, because their total budget that they voted, this is the beginning point, so yes. And I think that's why, like you see the superintendent, that's our piece of the superintendent's allocation.
That's
I
66,560.
don't think that number
Okay,
can be.
I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
I don't understand those numbers. The
So
superintendent.
the idea is that really quick, the schools, there's four basically pieces to the puzzle for anything that's done at the district level. There's the Silver Lake, in other words, the percentage of their responsibility that's for kids in grades 7 through 12. And then each town has a share of as a sort of claim essentially on their services for K to 6. So there's essentially three different, depending on how you do the math, there's either 2 or 3 different pieces that get put together to get to our costs. There's KES and KIS that are those 2 buildings. There's our fraction of Silver Lake, and then there's our fraction of central administration for KES and KIS that is shared with Halifax and with Dennett and Plimpton.
My only comment, Mike, and maybe this will have to be something for later on, unless Megan understands it. But how would that get funded?
Can I answer that? Oh, shared cost is brought to this.
Yeah, I thought
It
it
is.
was too, because if it wasn't, there's no
Then the
other
number would
funding.
go up, yeah.
There's
No,
other
I
funding.
know it's in the bottom line. It's the detail that I'm curious about. but we
Oh.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
So we have the new business manager and she's made a lot of changes with how these things look. So we are also still in the process of trying
Okay.
to fully
Okay.
understand where, because a lot of things also got moved to different line items.
Okay,
According to her, things were placed incorrectly
sure.
for the state purposes. So things might not look right for that reason, because she moved a lot of things around and we're still understanding where did they go and
Okay.
why did they get moved. So if it doesn't quite look right, it's just might be in here somewhere else because she moves so
Okay.
much around.
Put it like this, and I mean this with all due respect to the superintendent, and this is not a suggestion about the cause, but there is no way that the Kingston total allocation to Jill's salary is $66,000. There's no, like, there's just no way.
Well, no, yeah, but that's just for the local. You've also got the high school and the middle school.
So,
Okay, so you're only looking at what's coming through the 2 local
Okay.
schools.
all right, there we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
and those line items, like the, you know, the 1,000, 2,000, whatever. A lot of those categories were not correct. Statements highlighted that we need to put things in the right buckets. So rearranging all those buckets, the numbers are the same, they're just not in the same place.
Understood. Thank you.
And every time, my experience in industry, every time you rearrange buckets, somehow you end up with more costs than you had. That's part of the entertainment that you get when you come to one of my meetings.
All three.
Thank you.
Okay, so okay, so now if we can go on to the summary sheets that I provided, and we can get back to the detail here if you want to spend a lot of time, much time on the detail. But the summary sheet I gave you, I just want you to understand the process here of what happened, particularly this year. The first page is showing you the 15,596,804 that we have in the budget, that the school committee has voted, that the selectmen have budgeted, okay? The next one is the 17,056 that you have in your budget detail that some of people are still looking at, okay? So that was a difference of $1.5 million. Now, what did we do with that $1.5 million, okay? The next page, they came up with offsets of $800,000. I think of these as really revenue type items that are going directly into the school so that they don't have to go into their operating budget. They offset some of the costs in the operating budget. So you've got $65,000 for room rental. You've got $554,000 for anticipated circuit breaker income and a 240 grant. And you've got 180,000 that they used or they identified out of the state grant for the people in the immigrants at Baymont, the students there. So that they said, okay, we started with $1,459,000 problem. We're covering 800 of it right here. Now we go on to the next page, and this page is where we're understanding the emergency assistance shelter revenue that the good old Commonwealth of Massachusetts has sent to us. You can see on the left-hand side, you've got 102, 248, 252, 338. Those amounts have already been received, okay? And that adds up, I believe, to about 900K, the last time I looked at it.
150, yeah, little.
102, 248, 252, 338 equals 940K. So we have received, and this is, I'm just talking for our two local schools, $940,000 as reimbursements from the state, okay? Now, early on in this venture, I think you heard everybody trying to blame the 50 students or so from Baymont as killing this budget. Well, I am willing to bet my left arm, probably both arms, that the schools have not spent $940,000 on those, having those students. The number I like to use is, I'll give you $250,000, call it 240. You had to hire maybe an extra English language teacher. You had to do some supplies. You had to maybe have another para, whatever. Okay, so that you really generated, in my opinion, out of that 940K, 700K of additional income for the school system to help cover your operating budget. And why I say you can't say you spent that, when you get 49 students, I don't care where they're coming from. You're not building new schools. You're not hiring new teachers every time you get 5 new students, okay? So that it's a misnomer when the public or anybody from the schools tries to blame additional students. Yes, there's additional cost, but it's small compared to your total cost. Think of it as fixed costs versus variable costs, that so many costs in education are fixed. So that when we hear that the particular town, pick any town, is spending $20,000 per student, okay? That does not mean when one new student comes into the town, it costs the town $20,000. For one student, it probably doesn't cost a nickel, okay? If you get 10 students, it's gonna cost you something. But you don't go out and hire new superintendents, you don't build new buildings, you don't hire a lot of new teachers with that. So you've got to always keep in mind that when you hear $20,000 cost per student, maybe that's true for the number of students that are sitting there, but it's not true for when you hire somebody new. So anyhow, we got this 940,000. Over to the right, you can see that 122,000 of that was used to offset a problem in the current fiscal year. Another 158,000 had already been assigned to the budget problem. So they come down to this unallocated total of 836K, 836K of being available for the budget. So what they did was 121 and 158 had already been applied. So in effect, they've applied out of the 836 left, there's like about 650. They've applied almost all of it to get the $600,000 difference that we still had left here on your second page, 661,000. The reason I'm emphasizing this is if something isn't drastically done over the next 12 months, guess where we're going to be a year from now? We're going to be starting these local budgets in a hole of somewhere over $1 million, perhaps closer to 2 million, if you believe this 1.5 million. So, but minimum, you know, we've got to be prepared to take some actions that's going to help offset that $1 million plus that we put in here. Normally, Kyle Pike would be the first one to say, this is bad accounting. We shouldn't be doing this way. But I've got to the point where this year, if I could get a budget at 7% instead of 15%, it's worth it.
You're just trying to ride out the storm.
In effect, yeah. And probably do something that there are certain people in this room may have heard me say before, that we're kicking the can down the road for another year. But that is what, okay. And the last page in the package I gave you is really what the school committee does to authorize the school administration for their annual budget. So that you see that the top number is the 15,596 that we have in our budget here consolidated. Okay, then they say, okay, here's the $1.5 million that we really are using to supplement the budget. Circuit breaker for special education reimbursement, grant and revolving fund accounting totaling. That's where the part of that is a big part of it is the 900K from the immigrants, so that you get down, again, I don't think I can emphasize this enough. We see in our budget for local schools, $15,597,000. They're spending $17,057,000. It's important, again, for the public, understand, and know there's nobody from the public here, but understand that not only are what education budgets being funded by the town, but the state is involved. We're getting other sources of funds so that what we're really spending to educate the children in our 2 local schools this coming year is $17 million. Now, there's a lot more detail that, you know, some of us have watched school committee meetings or gone to school committee meetings, and you've seen where the discussions have been about special education dollars, about transportation dollars. I chose not to put that in the package here, but I certainly have it available. Any members that want more detail, One of the problems that I have always found, as long as you don't try to tie numbers together, I'm an accountant, so you try to tie one, but it's always such a moving target that to me, if I can accept that, hey, I'm talking $17 million and maybe I can only figure out 16.8 million or something, that it's difficult to track dollar for dollar going from one iteration of a budget to the next iteration. I was pleasantly surprised when I actually could get just one year that ties in nicely to it. I haven't been that successful at Silver Lake.
Yeah, but,
Go ahead, Mark.
to speak to your point, Silver Lake took an extra step, of getting into our E&D money in order to get those numbers for you. And
If you'll
then-
hold off a minute, I'm gonna
Okay,
go
well,
through the same type of thing, and then
second
I'm
part of
gonna
my
ask
pitch,
you
yeah.
for questions. Megan, do you have any comments on what I've said or any thoughts that you want to add to the discussion here?
I just think one thing it's important to note is this is a level service budget, so we haven't added anything. There had been some, in an ideal world, requests from our principals, but unfortunately, we just were not in a position to even
Yeah.
take
And
a look at those.
I'm glad you bring that up because if I'm on any committee that you start, Jeff, here, I think one of the things we need to do is start tracking hirings, okay? I thought Sarah presented a lot of good information, not only this year, but last year about, okay, here's, and maybe it's more so at the Silver Lake level, but here's, 7 paras that we hired in the middle of the year so that we're getting the full impact of them next year.
Mhm.
And so this time he said, well, how do we control this hiring? How do we do this? Well, these are special ed and we have to have them. So I think that somehow we ought to be able to get a better handle, even if I had to work with the, especially the local schools, it all goes through our human resources department here. So, okay,
We actually they have HR through Silver Lake, so she does the hiring
okay,
through that.
but their benefits, don't the benefits go through us?
Yeah, it's like weird.
Yeah.
They hire
yeah.
through the administration building, but they get their benefits through the town.
I just,
But I agree with you. I
My
think-
point is, and it's not only the schools, I've seen it in other departments. We always talk level services, but somehow we end up getting an extra body here, there, or everywhere. And I think it's as true. I know if you go back to some of the Silver Lake documents, especially, and I would say more so, I remember Sarah, when she first came on and we were going through the changes and everything, you'd see a table, a document that would show, 6 people here, 6 paras that, weren't in the budget last year and now they're in the budget. And so that's my issue with that type of thing, understanding.
We haven't been presented anything like that from Kingston, so I'm not sure.
You could be correct, yeah, or you probably are, but I'm referring more to things that I saw in Silver Lake
Okay.
presentations. And it may be all paras and all to do with special ed that, I keep hearing we can't do anything about it, but I just.
That's the tricky part.
I-
We can't, because we have to fund the special education, and it's
The
volatile.
state of Massachusetts says that you have to fund the special education. It doesn't tell you that you have to spend millions of dollars on it. That, how come if we have to spend it, how come, and Mark may want to chime in here. The Silver Lake Regional School District has the highest cost for special ed in the state. It's because other people know how to say no, or how to say, hey, I'm sorry to use this term, but other school systems will say, okay, I guess we have to have a Buick instead of a Cadillac. And I think we always have to have a Cadillac in our school system. Do you have any thoughts, Mark, or
Well,
comments?
to speak to that, we're in the market for a new special ed. But,
Again, we just
Yeah.
got one.
again, so, in our special ed, we looked at, in our shared cost discussion with the Kingston and Halifax and Plimpton, we looked at ways to bring in-house programs in. And at the end of the day, that combined with the other initiative to bring the administration support for financial back in, we weren't able to fund either of those two items that could have been a key to reducing costs. And this is, we get cited in audit after audit after audit that we need business help. And we ignore it, kick the can down the road, kick the can down the road. And I was not able to attend the beginning of the meeting, but there was no initiative from any of the shared costs, any of the committees, right? Who were there to move forward with funding the special ed or the administration business assist that we were supposed to.
I also remember, and I think you were around too, it's not any more than 6 or 7 years ago when we did do some funding for bringing more of these students in-house, having the ability. And we had 1 or 2 years where special ed costs, actually, they certainly leveled off, but
They
I think
declined
they
in
actually
absolute
came,
terms.
yeah, they actually
Hundreds of
declined.
thousands of dollars.
And the
So-
cost of transportation is the biggest
Yeah.
crime, in my opinion, because getting the students the services they need is fine, but to transport them to the location, the funds that have been authorized by the state that they can bid now are ridiculous. So I don't know if they're riding in the Cadillac they're talking. In a way.
Well, have we looked into having our own transportation?
We have, actually went out and purchased vans. We were moving towards vans that were handicap accessible, that could be moving children. We were unable to get the equipment in time. We still have that on the program in the capital fund to go forward. But I believe we got one this year to be able to start to do some of our own. And we actually have folks that can transport, that are licensed to do that kind of transport, already hired and already in the system, because of some of these vans are also used for sports programs.
And then, but what was the analysis as far as the savings?
It was, again, an investment. It takes time, and we're not in an investment position because we don't have the revenue to go ahead and put towards it. But if we had a little extra revenue, you would see the savings 3 years from now. But everybody looked at, this isn't the time to dive in, unfortunately, because we don't have the revenue that we needed to meet the town requirement. And I mean, we mortgaged ourselves going into E&D to fund our budget, which is, all of you think is a bad idea, I'm sure. And then we have historically been funding our entire capital plan from E&D, which we can't keep up. We have 20-year-old schools. And
That's right.
at some point, Carl, I can get into further, but we've had a facilities review that has numbers that I think you need to be sitting down.
I mean, essentially, all these years we've been paying off these schools, that fund should be increasing. It should be mountain high at this point, knowing that the repairs are going to be coming.
Right.
And we've pillaged it.
We have not banked anything, and if anything, and we have, still carrying debt on these two schools for another year and a half. That is all part of your assessment, by the way, if you want to know where that is.
All right, as far as local school budgets go, does anybody on the committee have any other questions or comments? Hopefully more in general than specifics.
I just have one general question. When you say it's a level service budget, you're saying level service at 17,056,000.
Yeah, so to keep what we have, that was the,
But to keep what we have, we need 1.5 million from the state itself.
No.
No?
The 17 million, think of the 17 million as the gross amount that they're gonna spend. The 1.5 million is what they've got some revenue to offset some of that. So it gets down to the 15 million that we actually put in our budget.
Okay, but we're really,
The total cost
the
is
total cost is
17.
17 million.
And that's what they
And they-
need to not fire a teacher.
Right, the total cost is
Yep.
17 million,
Yeah.
and we are just relying upon this other funding sources to get that number down to 15,596,000.
Yeah, and if we didn't do that, we would have to be going for a Proposition 2.5 override for that $1.5 million. If that $1.5 million wasn't available through other sources, we would be going for an override because we don't have it in our ability to tax.
But it appears that, like you said, $940,000 came from a situation that is hopefully going to be ended by the end of this calendar year.
And that's why I addressed it.
So some of that money was from,
Yeah.
last year as well. So
Yeah.
all of that didn't go into,
Over 3 buckets, I think.
well, last year, this year, and next year.
Yeah.
But for
But this is
FY
probably
50,
the last of it.
yeah, but for FY 26, we're looking at 835,507.
That's what they had left over at a point in time. Now we've used 650 of that
For FY 25.
for 26.
Six.
I think it actually went down to closer to 5 because there was something that had been doubled in the budget that Sarah took out that brought it down a little bit more.
Again, now see, there's an example why I say it's very difficult to talk a lot of specifics.
Yeah.
Because there are changes going on all the time. And so that's why I've gotten myself to a point where I try to understand it, plus or minus a couple $100,000 and say, hey, that's the best I'm going to be able to do.
Listen, I don't have any questions. I think I've come to every one of your meetings, right? I've seen it all the way through. Yeah. So I don't have very many questions, but I can just reiterate, I know there has to be change. Right?
The
And
biggest thing is money from the state, which people are trying. And Jason Frazier is really heading up a lot of
Yeah.
legislative stuff and he's seems to be very confident that there's money, that there's good odds that will come to the schools. It's kind of a timing issue as to when that might be. It is a sticky situation. We did kick the can down the road and nobody would say otherwise. The problem is, this is how we could get through this year.
Mhm.
And this is why, like, that is my intent, if we can form a small committee to focus on the school budget specifically, because it is so complicated. And there are all kinds of, it's like, what exactly is this? Is this something that can be reduced, changed, made more efficient? Whatever that might look like. And we've tried to do that as best we can this year. And to get it to not need.
We'll also say that, this is hardly an issue that's unique. I mean, this
It's
is
the whole
essentially every single
Absolutely.
Town.
school entity in the
Absolutely.
state of Massachusetts. And frankly, it's
it's because the
something of a
system's
miracle.
broken.
Yeah,
The funding.
and
broken.
it's almost something of a miracle that we're gonna get into 26 without an override, because my impression is that makes us virtually unique among towns in Plymouth County, except for ones that aren't even remotely comparable to us.
Okay, Derek and Deb, any comments or thoughts on the local school budgets that we're talking about?
Yeah, one thing that I would just like a little clarification on, when we say that this is a level services budget that we're providing for the schools, I mean, is it truly level services, or is like the student to teacher ratio increasing? Are we looking at a smaller headcount within the schools? Because I know that the initial discussion was that that open positions weren't going to be filled. So just was curious if I could get some clarification on that.
Sure. Yeah, those positions will remain because we did need to make reductions in staff. But as far as class sizes, those will remain. I mean, we're anticipating the same number of teachers per grade. Students just move up. So it is just what we have now. We will continue to have with the same relationship from the school to the student that we have.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. Nothing further.
And on the Silver Lake side, I think I would mirror that. Most part, there is a new scheduling initiative to rearrange the schedules, which is going to have an impact on class size, but I think it's going to be positive instead of negative at the end point. And because we weren't cutting positions, they were able to implement. This has been a 3 or 4 year look and study to look at a schedule.
Thank you.
Efficiency that I think will be helpful going forward.
Okay, let's do a motion to recommend approval for the KES. No, this one.
All right. I move that the finance committee recommend approval of the town of Kingston education budgets for Kingston Elementary, Kingston Intermediate in the amount of $15,596,804.
Second.
We'll do a roll call with members online. All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, aye.
Marcia, I.
David, I.
Derek, I.
Debbie, I.
All right, we recommend the approval of the budget as presented at the 7.1% increase, and we'll go from there. Now to look at Silver Lake. The package that I've given you on Silver Lake is just trying to go through a bit of the process. I did not provide a copy of their detailed budget. It's available online. I have a copy if somebody wants it. But on the first page, the important thing is that down towards the bottom, the final approved expenditures for the schools will be $45,246,684. Okay, that's their gross amount that they're spending. Again, if you go up to the top, the amount of what I call kind of the net spending, what our assessment is going to be based upon is the $40,644,440. Remember that that's for the three towns combined. And in order to get there, now go to the middle of the page where we're using $4,602,244, which is what Mark has been alluding to, somewhat, one time. Okay. Circuit breaker, special education reimbursement, 2.5 million. That's a normal ongoing item, so that's not a problem. The anticipated grant and revolving account funding totaling $1,033,000. That includes, again, some of the state reimbursement for the immigrant students. And then the toughest one of all is the last one, $1,069,244 of FY24 excess and deficiency funds. I think most of us know that that's nothing more than the regional school districts' free cash. And that's something that we don't like doing. The school committee doesn't like doing. It's something that normally they've tried to use as their capital budget for their capital expenditures. The philosophy up there, and I found it tough to disagree with, was, hey, we've been, challenged to get through this year at around a 2% bottom line assessment increase. Therefore, and we've got this bucket of funds. I'm using this term right out of a quote. And last year, we also used, I think last year was $1,250,000 was used. And the idea is Silver Lake will tell you that the school committee especially is an attempt to wean off of this process. So $1,250,000 was used last year, $1 million plus used this year. The plan is the next year, maybe you have to use $750K. The year after that, maybe $500,000, and get to the point where we don't have to do this. I'm glad that I'll be long gone and out of this world probably, because I don't see us getting there without a major override one of these years.
So what's left in that fund?
I've just gone over my meeting, but we have $300,000 for contingencies right now. Now, when you think that a rooftop unit on a cafeteria and you can't operate a school without a heating system in a cafeteria is $500,000. That's with a planned bid. So we have a failed AC unit right now, can't heat the cafeteria, can't run school. We're going to be coming back looking for a town meeting. Because, that's the end. If we can't find money and hide somewhere else, during our operating year to transfer.
So Indy, it only has 300K left?
300,000 left.
But that's after using 400K or so for a capital budget.
515.
But he's got, in
Yeah,
effect, he's got 815 and he's using 515 of it for a capital
Right.
budget for this coming
So
year.
we'll be pulling all of that
But-
money with some emergency. But
It's
this is the lowest since I've been on the school committee that we've had in our contingency funds.
Yeah.
We hope the towns understand that we're on a thin line right now.
And I think both the town and the schools have to get back to having more money available for capital. And, we've
and then you're not putting anything into it.
It gets replenished over different sources over
So
next
what-
year. So we will see
What'll get
anything
replenished?
that's left over from our budget operating this year has to roll back into that first. Then it's state certifies our budget. We can only keep 5% of our budget. Around 2.2 million can ever be in there. So they cap it. And anything above that, we can't keep in that contingency. Historically, we've kept it pretty close to full so that we can handle during the year contingencies. And we have to inform you, finance committees 3, we don't take money out of that. So you get an information versus a request for give us money. So, but it's a different way of doing it, but we have different things. And we have a power purchase agreement that funds is a revenue source for us every year. We have an offsite power purchase arrangement with a company down in Dartmouth that generates $400,000 a year. And that's the conservative number we put in next year's budget to anticipate that we're going to see that revenue. We're going to put air conditioning in the middle school. That's $1 million+ project. We're anticipating some rebates for that. So those funds will flow back in too. So these are some hidden, we can't bet on a rebate. We don't know what we're going to get. But these sources will come back in to help us out.
Not to go too far off course. What's going on with the request for an administrative building?
Well, Carl's smiling. So.
Did I go too far off course?
No, that's, you're pretty much there. So our admin building is out of date and out of compliance and has been for quite some time. And when I came back on the committee 2 years ago, the plan that was in place was to buy an $8 million building built on site at Silver Lake for 8,000 square feet. There's 18,000 square feet available in the marketplace of office space for $2 million, all built. So those kind of options is what we're looking at an alternative to do that. There's no reason the administration needs to be on the Silver Lake campus. And we provide this preschool now that's located at Kingston Elementary School. So at some point, Kingston Elementary School is going to say we don't have room for it. And we're going to have to find another facility for that. So we're sort of co-shopping ideas to come up with that going forward. And Carl's been involved a little bit with some of the ideas that we're coming up with. But the building we have is out of date and needs significant work, which is in that facilities report that I just shared with Carl. We can share it with you guys, but it's we'll be coming back. We have a walkthrough of our facility scheduled for a tri-town meeting on June 16th at 5:30 to actually walk through the school buildings and point at some of these things and get an idea of what we're hoping that we realize that this is 3 towns problem, not just a Silver Lake problem. And we'll get some buy-in on ways to either go out to bond and come up with this. And again, I mentioned the debt that's falling off. There's been a couple proposals to go out and borrow more money. In my opinion, if you spent your debt payment on the schools every year, you wouldn't have to go borrow anymore. I don't like the idea of a bond unless you have to. But that's about 1.6 million a year.
The danger is always when bonding comes off, that if you don't go out and bond again, it gets used in an operating budget.
Yeah, it's going to be spent somewhere else. But right now, your bond payment is part of your assessment. So you wouldn't see a change in your assessment if we just kept the same amount of money. But 20-year-old buildings are difficult to maintain. At this point, we're behind the 8 ball. So I can tell you as chair of the facilities committee that it's nobody's fault. It's just that we've moved ourselves to it. Everything at a 20-year point, an air conditioning or anything else, is at the end of its useful life. Now, do we just replace it because we don't jump in my opinion, to do that. We start looking at the things that are failing and have a plan, but that's gonna take, a process, but it's crazy money. Just the 2 school buildings without the admin and the sewage treatment plant was $50 million. To give you an idea of the size, and I think we built the schools for them. So, it's sad to see, but dollars don't buy what they used to be.
Now, on the next, if we turn the page on my handout here, okay, we're gonna go through some of the steps that, remember that when we talk about $45 million school budget at Silver Lake, again, that's the cost to run the school on an annual basis. And one of the things I have always said, I've always focused on the percentage increase at that bottom line, $45 million, because a lot of people, like selectmen that I've worked with in the past, have always worried more about the assessment, and that's a true ideal. But the Silver Lake people, the administration, the school committee, they can't control an awful lot of the assessment. It's based upon the number of students. It's based upon the required minimum distribution, which gets me to this very first page here. The Commonwealth says that each town has to contribute a minimum amount to their education. And so what happens is that's the start for the assessment calculation. Well, you can see in this one here for this year, the Halifax increase is $393,000. The Kingston increase is only $337,000, and we're twice as big. Okay, so when something like that happens, I don't want to say distorts, but that's really what happens. That in this case, it's favorable to Kingston because the other towns' expected contribution has gone up more than ours has. So that and that's part of the reason why you'll see when we get to the actual assessments that our percentage increase on an assessment basis is not nearly as bad as Halifax's is this year. So that I have always felt when I'm trying to challenge the school committees and the school administrations that what they really have control over is that gross budget, okay? And by God, Kingston, selectmen, finance committee, all of us, we should accept what the assessment calculation is if we like what the bottom line expense increase is, because we can't do anything about it, or the school people can't do anything about it. Yeah, I don't like it years when I've seen years when the Silver Lake budget increases 2.5%, but the Kingston assessment increases 6% because of the distribution of the students, because of the minimum required contribution. So that's the first thing to know.
Well, that differential is driven by changes in the percent of Halifax kids versus Kingston versus something within Silver Lakes predominantly, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So they had a big
Exactly.
class of 7th graders, we had a big class of seniors, and
Yeah.
it cycles. Okay.
Yeah. And it also has to do with the actual, there's a way of measuring in effect the richness of the, the state has
That was
magic
1 to
formula.
9 code or something. Yeah.
The next page, okay, is where we start the assessment process, so that the operating budget, you can see the top line, that's what I focus on. The operating budget for Silver Lake only is increasing $795K or 2%. So when you look at that, you say, hey, that's really good. And then what they do is all of these other items, I've argued for many years, they ought to be bracketed, because these are all items that are coming out. So you start with your gross, now you're going to get some insurance reimbursement, your capital budget, your state aid. You can see they've got $9,291,000 of state aid. That's up 1.9%, 170K, transportation aid, etc. So you go on to the next page, Okay, and it's the bottom line of the next page is a $28 million assessment that gets for the operating budget that gets distributed between the three towns based upon the percentage of school students. Okay, so Kingston is always somewhere around 53 to 57%, plus or minus a percentage. Now we add in the so-called exempt capital. This is the debt service, okay, that they're still spending each year to pay for the buildings. Total is $1.4 million. You can see how it came down this year, the way that debt payments are being reduced. Kingston gets, I always think about Kingston getting $800K. We've actually got down below $800K. That gets added into the operating assessment that you just saw. And so we come down to the total assessments on the next page, which is now this is where the changes come in. This one is off, 30, 40K from what the final number is. But you can see that the assessment Halifax went up 5%. See, their increase is almost as much as Kingston's. This is 440, ours is 473, 2.8%. And so that's the magic, the way the assessments are put together. So if you don't remember anything else from Mike's lecture here on the assessments, is remember that the assessment is critical for what goes into our annual budget. The actual total expenses of Silver Lake is what's important to consider on a year-to-year increase basis. The next page is where Sarah, just tries to show the operating budgets. And your final page is the magic consolidation showing that the education for the three towns is $58,077,000, an increase of almost $4 million, 3.9 million, 7.2%. Now, one might state that no matter how much we want to take care of our students, we want to have the best education in the world, I don't think even school committee members can argue that on an ongoing basis, towns cannot afford a 7% increase every year. That real estate taxes cannot go up 7% every year. It just is not sustainable. That if we were to be at a point where taxes have to go up 7% every year, you would see, I think, a lot of people leaving Kingston, a lot of issues. Now, what the magic number is, I think we all can agree that Proposition 2.5% in this day and age isn't the answer either. But it's got to be somewhere less than 7%, in my opinion. I've always gone with the 4% number, saying that new growth, if we could ever get the town to recognize that we need commercial growth, new growth allows you to go from 2.5% to 4% without really hurting the average taxpayer. Now, that's my spiel on the Silver Lake assessment budget that we're going to be seeing.
Where are the other two towns at, Carl? Are they both going to overrides?
Plimpton, the last I knew, is probably going to squeak by without an override. They're right at the levy limit, but they're probably going to be okay. Halifax will need an override.
And what's the consequence if their override doesn't pass to us?
I think the concern is that Plimpton and Kingston will both pass the Silver Lake budgets. So Halifax will be out on a limb. And if it doesn't pass, they would probably have to gut their police, fire and everything else, in their local schools in order to pay their Silver Lake assessment. There's, nothing else. Although one thing I have gotten to know some of the people in Halifax, and they always tend to holler the loudest. But when push comes to shove, there were years when Halifax, especially their old town administrator, they absolutely could not do it. They could not do it. And then when push came to shove, they'd be able to live with their assessment, and they'd have excess levy capacity as a percentage of their valuations higher than Kingston did. So it's interesting. I think there's always a little bit of fluff and discussions, but I believe this year Halifax is really financially in trouble. So, any comments or anybody, does this help understand a bit about how the Silver Lake budget process gets put together? And
just for, well, no one's really at home, but if there were people here that actually cared, yeah, that's a shot. How are we doing with regionalizing transportation? Can we talk about that?
Well, we participate in the same contract with regionalized transportation. So
excuse me.
because we're a regional school system, we get compensated for transportation. You're asking for the state compensation?
Yeah, and I guess what I mean too is regionalizing the whole system.
Oh, you're looking at regionalizing
it's not bad.
So town of Kingston and Halifax,
173.
and Halifax piece was very quickly transferred to Kingston when they didn't approve their MBTA. So we have grant funding to go and study the Silver Lake full regionalization. And that would simplify our region, and it may have some cost savings. Especially considering the people that we hire, our special ed director, all our staff has to go to 4 meetings. So, I mean, they have each 3 towns and they have Silver Lake, and then they have a joint meeting periodically every once in a
No,
while.
the
So you really call it
efficiency that
5.
would bring is massive.
But it appears that it'll be, your hardest sell, I think, is gonna be the town of Plumpton. They love their autonomy in their Dennett school.
Oh,
And
yes,
I think that I think we all love it.
No, I have a comment on that.
Yeah, but I think overall, if this regional agreement was structured to maintain school districts that have that autonomy, I think it could certainly move forward. I am open to discussion. I think you'll find everybody else should be at this point. I don't know what you feel.
I think that most people, I mean, I know everyone wants the information for Kingston. We're just waiting. I'm not sure. There were people that had to be appointed, and I know Jill was still waiting on, I think, one of the school committees. I'm not sure what else. So hopefully that will start the process soon.
I
But
don't know if Silver Lake's appointing anybody either.
I'm not sure. But as far as Plimpton, they don't have to participate to fully regionalize. Kingston and Halifax can fully regionalize just the 2 towns, and then Plimpton would be on their own to figure out what they do for 7 through 12. They could pay us to take them, but they could also go to another town as well. But the upside would just be that, because Plimpton's, they have no interest in full regionalization. They have made that very, very clear, like 0 interest. So if they had to participate, that could potentially be problematic. So I think all 3 towns would have to agree for that, right?
I'm not sure, and I think that's part of the study,
That
but
was my understanding.
I'm trying to get the study to include the facilities that we have in the process of full regionalization, particularly our admin space. And to say, can we have that, somewhere else too, same time? And also a demographic study of the 3 towns. So I don't think you can talk about full regionalization until you actually look at the demographics of the 3 towns and how they're growing. So our administration is often thrown back to me, well, this is Kingston's problem about the growing. I said, no, if Kingston's growing and Halifax is shrinking, we still have the same issue as far as the number of kids we need to educate in the full regional system. So I hope that when they put the thing together, that we get an actual growth study of the 3 towns, at least to speak to it.
Keith, when you and I talked a couple weeks ago, we as the town kind of own that money to do that work, right?
Right.
Yeah, it was awarded to Halifax and.
Yeah.
Marks Point.
Yeah.
They were gonna lose it.
Yeah.
Because they became funding, so the board here agreed to
Yeah.
be the grant holder. We've, Kingston has appointed the town of Kingston's appointed their different people from the board of selectmen and finance committee. We're waiting for the schools and other communities, and frankly, I think it's probably gonna. I would say it's gonna probably start kicking off in April.
No.
Once, I'd like to have it start kicking off in April. I don't, it's not my, I'm one person that may nudge us along, but we want to get through some of the busier town meeting times before people were gonna be asked to spend another night out during the week. So, yeah, to me, it's gonna come down to, I think there's gonna be savings. And everybody's gonna have a different opinion. How much savings do you want to enjoy to lose your autonomy as an independent school district? And every household is probably gonna have a different opinion. And I think from my point of view anyways, we've met with a couple of companies we've had phone conversations, Zoom meetings, with a couple of companies who performed these studies in the past. And, it's from my point of view, we should be providing unbiased factual information to the voters of all three communities, and they and the voters in each of those communities can decide how they want to move forward. And we'll take that information and either regionalize or not.
What's the timeline on,
It's like 18 months. You're looking at a vote probably 2 years out.
so it doesn't help us?
Not next year.
Have we hired the consultant who's going to do the study?
We haven't.
That's a key.
It is. We got one from the committee together first. I mean, so the superintendent and myself, the Kingston finance director. There may have been somebody else in the room. I apologize. Maybe the Silver Lake School business administrator, I think, was part of a Zoom call with UMass Amherst. The Collins Center does a tremendous amount of studies. They've done these before, so we've spoken to them just to talk about what they could offer, what the timeline would be, and they've sent us some draft proposals of other communities studies just so you can see what they look like, and there'll be some Silver Lake specific type things we want to look at certainly. And then Jill, and I don't know if there were other communities there or not. The study we talked to UMass Amherst, I believe, Halifax and Plimpton's. Well, Halifax is not this, Plimpton's was. She got hives. Well, just the thought of it. So they had a conversation with, I believe, somebody that for the Massachusetts School Association, some group that also has done some of these. So we're really just going to form the committee first, and then dig in, choose a consultant, and just provide them the information to start.
So who's spearheading it?
Kingston will be spearheading, I think, because it's our money. But I'd like, again, I'm hoping that whether it be
Well, I can just comment as a taxpayer.
excellent.
The house is on fire.
Yeah,
Can
me too.
you get moving, please?
Sure.
And figure out what's going on with this thing so we can try to save some money and figure
Hire
this
a
out?
consultant. We've got the money, right? $150,000.
So
Okay, and we've had the money for a while,
I have the money now for a couple of months, maybe 3.
and we still don't have a consultant.
I'm
We
sorry.
don't have a
Committee.
committee for it.
No,
No,
I'm
Yeah.
I'm sorry we're killing the message,
Somebody
It's
did.
fine. No, it's fine.
right? But
Yeah.
just to be on the record, the house is on fire, the money's burning,
Yeah.
and there's no growth, there's no water.
Fire out.
It was fire out,
Good fun.
and we have no control of the state's shenanigans. So what we have control in, we gotta take the bull by the horns and try to make stuff happen.
Understood. So I'll talk to Jill tomorrow and see if she can get on a school committee agenda, the choosing of
April 10th, we could.
committee members for whatever school department, whatever school committee doesn't already.
It might be Plimpton that has not. You say Halifax has, we have.
Yeah, I don't know where Silver Lake is, to be honest with you. I don't remember if we got to that on the last agenda. No two regional school districts are alike in the entire state of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So as you look
They're their
The
own little
study-
snowflakes.
Oh,
It's just amazing how they're all restructured, so you can't just pull one off and say, we're gonna do this example. So as they do this recommendation, hopefully they'll come up with a rewritten agreement that will make some changes too. There may be efficiencies just within that agreement. The other thing is currently the 3 towns own the facilities for the elementary school. And I don't personally see transferring the properties to the region. I think they're gonna stay.
I agree with you, because I think one of the concerns that was raised a year or so ago by one of the communities when we talked about that was, we know, for example, that the 2 Kingston schools have roof issues. And we as Plimpton or Halifax don't want to have to contribute to that. And that makes all the sense in the world. So I think what I've learned, you can write a regional agreement that's specific to, in our case, Silver Lake, that would include, that the buildings that house the elementary school
Right.
and the intermediate school would remain town of Kingston properties, and expenditures that are for, our capital related or whatever, just not maintenance issues, would be the town of Kingston's responsibility to maintain. That seems to be a big issue. So, whether we have, and I know one another big issue is gonna be, again, we talked about different headcounts and different grades over the entire district. I'm sure people will have a strong opinion about, shipping a Halifax child to Plimpton or Kingston to try to even out the number of kids in each grade.
But once this process gets started, there'll be probably hearings or like
Oh, yeah.
forums and,
Yeah.
but we,
Oh, yeah.
you're to prognosticate about what you think the issues
And the
are
town's
going
gonna
to
send out
be.
leaflets to advise you that
Right,
it's coming.
let's just get going.
Yeah, I got a couple of days a week I can work on that. My weekends are mine, and I'm gonna keep them that way. So when I finish up this budget
Yeah.
process in April, I'm gonna jump on this, but I'm trying to get a couple other things done, so I apologize for everybody's disappointment in the speed of this project. But I will get there.
David, can I speak to the transportation things while Carl, if I may?
Sure.
Plymouth County Commissioners and the Plymouth County Advisory Board are also looking into regionalizing transportation for things like special ed and local schools and regional schools if they are able to. So they are in the process of looking into that for Plymouth County. Because as a bigger area, we could probably save a lot of money. So that's something we've been pursuing.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I've spoken to Treasurer O'Brien from Plymouth County a couple of times. And what he's had some initial discussions, I think, with some communities, not Kingston, but others. And one of the things I think that each community would have to kind of jump on is a longer term commitment. They're gonna have to upfront costs for vans and transportation, the vehicles themselves, right? So they can't, I don't think they're interested or can make the numbers work. If you've got a community who jumps on for the first 3 years and they buy the equipment they need to transport kids based on a number, and then all of a sudden Kingston drops out because they want to go in a different direction. And now they've got vans that are sitting idle or aren't being used as efficiently as they could be. So I think they are interested in it from my point of view, to add for Kim's point, and when they do approach it, they're going to be looking for a longer term commitment from communities, which, they certainly did a great job with the ARPA stuff. So they've got a little bit of a track record, and they want to make this work. So, I think they'll be able to be successful. It's just a matter of getting them on.
Okay, with that, I'd like to move along here. I think we have talked up as much as we can, understand the assessment process, the Silver Lake budget. We're going to vote on this with one caveat. The last page that I got from Kathleen on the summary budget, I assume the assessment number changed about $43,000. So as long as she's got the latest and greatest, I'm gonna vote that. But if we come back 2 weeks from now and we have to revote it because it's $43,000 difference. I know there was some last minute changes, and I've given Mike here the number that was on the last thing that I saw.
I recommend that the Finance Committee approve Kingston's assessment for Silver Lake Regional School District for fiscal 26 in the amount of $17,173,786.
Second.
All in favor? Kyle, I.
Michael, I.
Marcia, I.
David, I.
Derek, I.
Debbie, I.
So we recommend approval of the budget as we have reviewed it tonight. Thank you, both Mark and Megan. You're welcome to stay as long, but and I really appreciate having two committee members show up.
Well, you got a very good presentation,
You know.
that act. But thank you, Carl, for all your participation at our meetings, and I really sincerely appreciate of all the public officials, you definitely have the best attendance record at the school.
And I do think that I've started to get a fairly decent understanding of the processes, and my goal for this next year is to understand some of the detailed numbers just a little bit better.
Therefore, we get your job.
Thank you, all of you. Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Megan.
JFK got assassinated. Looking into the see how that looks.
Okay, so the next thing I'd like to cover is the elected officials' salaries. Something that I never am enthusiastic about the finance committee doing. However, we seem to be doing it one more year, and I would hope that when the treasurer collector is actually 100% appointed, and we only have one elected full-time town official, that we will get out of it. Now, what I looked at is the treasurer collector this year is being paid $96,763, which is a grade 11 step step 6, I believe. It's definitely grade 11. And to go up to yeah, it's definitely grade 11, step 6, 96,763. Well, I think what we did last year, or maybe the year before, is say, okay, what's the next step? The next step, step 7, is $100,449 for an increase of $3,686, which is 3.8%.
Can you repeat that number real quick? Sorry.
Yeah, the step 6 is 96,763.
Okay.
Step 7 is 100,449. A difference of $3,686 or 3.8%. That's the treasurer. The town clerk is grade 11 again, step 4, 89,791. Step 5 is 93,212 for an increase of 3,421. Again, 3.8%. So I'm proposing that we recommend these increases totaling $7,107. Now, if anybody has any other ideas or would like to do anything differently, speak up now.
Can you repeat the town clerk numbers? I'm sorry.
Grade 11, step 4, 89,791. Step 5, 93,212. Difference 3,421.
And that new step is from the coming.
It's actually from the current year.
Oh, okay.
Because, that's not available yet.
So that's what we did last year. We did just the step last year.
Yeah.
But historically, 5 years, what have we done?
Historically, when I was here before my thing, I used to just suggest that we did 4% flat or 3% flat or whatever, without getting into any kind of detail. That was before we had this study that has assigned these grades so that the treasurer is assigned a grade 11. The clerk is assigned a grade 11. But, you
Okay.
know, they haven't been brought under wage and personnel yet.
Yeah, all right, that makes sense.
Yes,
If I could,
Mr. Town
if I
Administrator.
could, just to touch on that. So I did reach out to legal counsel to verify they can, an elected official cannot go in wage and personnel. So you're gonna have at least,
Okay,
if you continue to have an elected clerk, you're gonna have a clerk in a elected position outside of wage and personnel.
okay.
And so that means outside these steps that you've been,
No, well, in effect, we can still use those, the grades as being what, if they were appointed, what the study said the grade should be.
I guess I'm confused. I'm looking at the town clerk budget. This is 2025.
You should be able to find.
It says 91,587.
That is a placeholder increase inserted into it.
Oh, so, okay.
Is
So
it,
that's
is the,
just
is
like
the
a made-up
80, the
number.
25 number?
No,
The
I don't-
25 budget, you should have that there.
I have it, and that was, the 25 budget was 58,709. Actual.
That's what
That's
they've
the
actually given.
actuals.
Okay, that's all they've actually
It's
given you.
one
Then it's
of the-
89,791.
Yeah.
But, that's the number you gave me, but you want to go to this 591, 5, no, you want to go to 93,212.
That's what I'm suggesting as a possibility, because that would be the next step in the grade.
But did you make that recommendation thinking they were part of our wage and personnel system and that we were bound to give them?
No,
that?
absolutely not.
Okay.
So I just trying to have a basis. And this is what we did last year.
But didn't we go through this budget already?
I thought we did.
But that's why it gets added into a separate article. It's the only
Okay.
place where it's not in the budget. Although I think we were inconsistent. It may be in one budget, not the other.
Well, I will postpone until elected officials budget or vote as is. And then I wrote accepted 21925.
Yeah, well, we accepted the budget,
The
but
placeholder
without this
budget.
increase.
This not, but
Yeah.
you called the placeholder for 91,587.
Placeholder short.
Is the placeholder, I assume, is just 2% flat, right?
Yeah.
Right, it says 2%.
And see, what we've asked for is that shouldn't be any placeholder. And I think if you look at the treasurer and collector's budget, there wasn't any placeholder,
I think you're right, Tom.
okay?
Oh, I'm just trying to figure out why
Yeah.
the 2% that we approved as a placeholder is insufficient.
Why can't we just move this up every year? Like move up this discussion before we do this?
Really good, good.
I mean,
Doesn't that just make sense?
Yeah, same way.
Yeah.
I mean, I understood if they were part of the wage and personnel
I
system, it
guess
seems
that's
like
part
it
of the
would.
confusion.
So when we.
Unfair, but-
When we did the compensation study, we included the elected officials as well, because we wanted to make sure that we were paying them a reasonable wage. So I would suggest respectfully that even though they're elected, you know, they'd be treated the same as a wage and personnel employee.
But how about the select board?
Select board,
They
they
get
can propose whatever they want to propose.
But that's
The selectmen get $2,000. It's not
Again, I'm just
really
saying,
like,
I don't think people run for public, I hope people don't run for public office because it looks like a well-paying gig.
Well,
I hope
think
they
that-
run
I
for
think
public
that-
office
yeah, I
because
think
they want to
that- I
make
think
the
that
place they live
A tax collector,
a better place.
a tax collector, treasurer, and a town clerk position, they have to be a professional. And we have to pay them responsibly, or you get what you pay for.
I'm not
And I can assure
disputing
you-
that. I think 91,000 is,
And I would just argue that that's completely inconsistent with anybody else with compensation. And I think that's.
and if I may, where was this discussion with every single other individual that we basically gave a blank check to for the increases that were based upon the step increase? I feel like we're splitting hairs on what is essentially nothing, relatively speaking, for the amount of the budget that we have right now.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that's why I just wanted to get the discussion started. And if somebody wants to propose anything different than my using the next step and which results in 3.8% budgets, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess, Marcia, what it comes down to is last year, primarily, we started and said, like, what's the easiest way to go year by year? Instead of arbitrarily saying 2% this year, 1% this year, 3% this year for the elected officials, we're just going to give them the step like every other person in town hall.
Again, then we should have done that before we approved this budget.
That's what I was
Because
saying.
you left, again, I'm, feeling as though.
We're gonna revote the budget.
I know, I understand that, but I just think the timing is.
So do you have a problem with the process or do you have a problem with the dollar amount?
I don't know. I have to think about both
Okay.
of them. I mean, because I thought this was done with. I didn't, and I didn't see that in the revised budget sheets I got.
And that, again, that's because these increases go in a separate article on the warrant. Okay, so that normally they're not in the budget at all. Okay, that they go on a separate article in the warrant, and then when the town meeting approves it, then it gets added into the budget. If you look at your treasurer and collector, you'll see that there's nothing in there.
I understand. I just don't know why you even voted on this budget then. This
My
timeline.
mistake, maybe.
Again, it was prepared. That's my only point. This is really a warrant item discussion more than a approval of the town clerk's
But
budget.
it's just difficult to break it apart. And again, I'd like to kind of chime on to what Keith said, that these particular, even though they're elected positions, they're treated almost the same as the appointed position. So the treasurer, the collector, and the town clerk are full-time employees, just like the fire chief or the police chief or the town administrator or anybody else. So that it's kind of hybrid that and I guess now Jay is confirming, the 10 years that I've been involved in the finance committee, the finance committee always has this assignment. And I've always said, well, why doesn't wage and personnel take it over? And town council is telling us because it doesn't belong there, so that I'm comfortable in what we should do is whatever we determine we want to vote these two salaries to be, we vote those salaries. They go into the warrant article like they always do, and then we'll revote the clerk's budget here to take that amount out. To take that 2% out.
I don't care what process you use. I think you're asking for us to vote on these, like to put this in the warrant. Right. Okay.
Which is always the way it is.
Yeah.
Right. But I thought I didn't know from the agenda that we were on the warrant items. I'm just confused. I thought we were on
Okay, well, I hope we've
the
cleared it up.
elected official salary discussion vote, and that's really as part of, but it's really part of the warrant. Okay. I got it.
All right, does anybody object to the 3.8%? I will move that the finance committee recommend the treasurer's salary as the current grade 11, step 7, $100,449. The town clerks as the grade 11, step 5 salary of $93,212 for a total increase to go into the warrant article of $7,107.
Second.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, aye.
Marcia, no.
David,
Sorry, Dave.
right?
Debbie, I. Debbie, I.
The Finance Committee recommends these amounts on a vote of 5-1. Okay, the,
Before we move on to the warrant articles, and you can tell me if I'm out of turn here, Mr. Chairman, is there any way we can revisit the library budget and potentially, or we can have this discussion at another meeting, given that it looks like the worst is not happening, potentially increasing it back, the books and periodicals line item to what was requested by within that department?
absolutely. And that goes into the next item, which we've got a couple of department budget changes to vote. So let's do those and then we'll look at the library.
Thank you.
In fact, while it's fresh in mind, shall we do the town clerk one first here?
What we did was step one. We now need to go in and do step two, which is a reduction of by 2 out of the 3.8%.
So the same as fiscal 25.
91,587. Take away 89,791 is $1,796.
All right, so in my notes, I think we voted that without the increase.
Oh,
Cause I think, cause I have a note that we subtracted out 1796 and we voted 218,637.
perfect,
That was
That's
easy.
all set.
perfect.
We voted 220,433.
I'll just revote.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna move the Finance Committee recommend approval of the town clerk's budget for fiscal 26 in the amount of $218,637 to reflect that portion of the budget will include only the part of the town clerk's salary that is included in the fiscal 25 budget with the increase in warrant article currently listed at 19.
Second.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, aye.
Be in favor. I think it's kind of a complicated motion, but Marcia, aye.
David, I.
Derek, aye.
Debbie, I.
All right, we recommend that new budget total. And well, Keith, I'll make sure that we get together with Kathleen and Rhonda. You've got that down to make sure we get Kathleen to make the adjustment if need be. And so Keith, okay. Okay, the next one is the accounting department. I don't know that we even need to, we can just, if we want to do these quickly, I've got the total dollar adjustments. We can just vote the adjustments.
Oh, that's in the explanation sheet, right?
I'm gonna do this for discussion, just to get it on the table. I move the Finance Committee recommend the transfer of $20,000 from the treasurer's to the accounting budget in order to reflect transfer of the Service Bureau budget from the treasurer to the accounting office to reflect a change in payroll oversight for fiscal 26.
Second,
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, aye.
Marcia, aye.
David, I.
Derek, aye.
Debbie, I.
Done. Thank you.
Okay.
What happened with debt service?
The town treasurer didn't have an accurate number.
Yeah, we have to vote on an increase here. Is that right?
A big increase.
Mhm.
All right, which one are you on next?
Three, treasurer, right?
Keep going.
Do we also have to vote on health insurance? Don't we? A decrease in health insurance?
Yes. In fact, I'm gonna do the same thing that Mike just did. I move that we increase the debt service budget by $73,666 to get to the correct number. I move that we vote to reduce the health insurance budget by $30,666 to reduce the Council on Aging budget by $2,000 for in the food account. The offsets we had already done in the selectmen, police, and fire back on March 5th. So that is why that is a net increase of $41,000.
Net increase of 41,000, but which is taken in by 41,000 decreases we already did 2 weeks ago.
That's correct.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, aye.
Marcia, I.
David, I.
Eric, I.
Debbie, I.
All right, we recommend those new amounts that agree with what the town administrator and the finance director have currently in the budget. The next item, let's look at the library here. The library budget, I remember we had a couple of votes on it that we had voted to, I think I was the one that brought up a recommendation to increase it by the $25,000 that had been cut. And we voted that motion, we voted it down. And now we have a suggestion on the table to bring that vote up again and perhaps increase it by the 25,000. Am I correct, Derek?
Yeah, yes. If I recall correctly, and I really don't want to be putting words in any of my fellow committee members' mouths, the concern was at that point in time, an increase. Individuals were wary of that given the situation that we thought we were heading towards an override. And now that it appears that that just no longer is the case, I'm hoping that feelings might have shifted on just also realizing the importance of maintaining, I forget what, I don't want to speak to this, but basically our certification and not jeopardizing our spending that we are required to have on this particular item for books and periodicals.
Discussion. Any comments from Mike, Masha, or David?
Oh, no, Derek, I'm glad you brought this up because the library director did send us out an email or sent a bunch of additional information after that hearing, I think regarding the whole certification process and I thought that was really helpful. So I'm glad you brought up revoting on this particular budget because I do think I voted no. So I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Yeah.
So just.
I'm a big fan of our library, so any chance to support it, obviously, on there. So
Yeah, I'm a big fan as well, Derek, and I think I was a yes originally. But just to correct the record in one thing, we still may be headed towards an override. Police is still asking for money that's above and beyond. So we're not completely out of the woods. But I don't think the 25K makes or breaks it. So
Yeah, the only thing I would add to this is that the finance committee can vote to recommend that the budget be increased for the library by 25,000. It would then be the only difference between what the selectmen have voted. So it would have to go back to the selectmen for their approval of if we vote the 25,000, then it's going to go back to the selectmen for them to vote their up or down on the 25,000.
Look, if I end up being the 1 in a 5-1 vote, so be it. We talk for months and months and months at these meetings about sources of frustration that we cannot get things under control. From my perspective, to give up, yes, maybe it's not a make or break thing, but for me, there's a symbolism to it, which is that to give up because we were able to find a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow on Beacon Hill.
Well, yes
To
and no.
add 20, hang on, to just add another $25,000 to what is gonna become millions in problems for fiscal 27. I'm not gonna vote for. it. I am a big fan of the library too. I think it's a great resource. But we've built this in, and to give it up because we got this magic money tree in another place, I'm not gonna support. And I think we have such a hard time finding any places to save even money that might not be make or break. I have a really hard time getting to yes on this.
And my only retort to that would be, do you believe that there's a 16% state mandate do you think that is real? When they tell us that's real and we need periodicals to be at a certain amount, 16% in order for us to get our state funding, and if not, they can pull it. How is that any different than the state saying you must fund special ed or XYZ can happen to you? That's my only
I
retort to
mean,
that.
for one thing, I don't believe we can be sued for having an uncertified library. But for another thing, do we need every dime of the $25,000 to get the 16.0%? Because I would be very reluctantly open to 5 or 10 if that's what it takes to get the 16%. But to just restore it because we can't bring ourselves, no matter how frustrated we all are with the bottom line, to go with any single detail. I'm just not gonna sit here and vote for it.
I hear you.
Yes, Mr. Town Administrator.
Would the finance committee like me to find out what that number would be to get into, to get the library to become certified?
I think I already looked at it.
The one thing that I will add, and I believe this is coming from our finance director, is that the library budget did come in under the budget request. It was one of only the few budgets to actually do so. So we were already cutting from a budget that already adhered to the budget request that we sent out. So kind of seems unfair to me to punish someone who was already doing well.
Just make a motion.
Okay.
You can split the baby.
I'm just gonna add to that. I'm the one that met with chatted with the library, and I too am a big fan of the library, but they do have other sourcing available. Of course, I don't want them to lose their accreditation. So, but I kind of agree. I mean, it's ridiculous. 4% raises, 7% raises. I mean, it's just, the budgets are out of control. And it's like, as a taxpayer, it's like, where is it going to end? And, and at the same time, like, nobody shows up at these meetings. And it's like, I feel like even if we say no, the town votes it through anyways. So, obviously I don't want to punish the library. Probably of all the services, that's probably one of the ones that I use the most. But I don't know. I kind of feel we need to.
My only comment is, and I said this when we reviewed the library, I personally did not like reducing the library budget when I was increasing schools, the local schools even now, 7%, when I was increasing fire and police by 10, 12%, whatever the numbers were. And so I feel the same way. Derek, how about a motion?
Oh, can I ask one question
Okay,
before we go? Hey, Derek, are we focusing on the books and periodicals?
Yeah, it's the books and periodicals line item that the department request came in at $128,125 up from the request. Thank you. In 24, yeah.
Can I ask that we take the town administrator up on his offer to dig in find out what that number is for 16% and add this to the April 2nd agenda. Is that something, again, I'm happy to just vote no tonight if that's what people
Well-
want to do, but I think it's a matter of.
I remembered
process.
when I looked at this before, at the 103, we were at like
Right.
11.5%.
They wanted, right, and they wanted to add 25,000.
As I remember.
That's what I wrote down.
And then when as I remember, when I did the math on the 128, I think it was 15.5. It was still under the 16.
Right, I think that, and I remember, and I felt bad, and I think I voted no. Again, I can't recall, but but now that we're
Like, trust
revisiting
me,
it,
I think it's 15.5 at the plus 20.
I'm still a no on this. I don't
All
agree
right.
with any of the logic
Motion,
here.
let's have a motion and let's vote it and we'll go from there.
Yeah. I move that the finance committee approve the library budget with personnel services in the amount of, oh God.
Just do the total.
I was gonna say, can I just do the total? Move the library budget in the amount of $822,434.16.
Second.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, no.
Marcia, I.
David, I.
Derek, I.
Debbie abstain.
All right, the finance committee recommends the budget with the $25,000 increase 411. And we'll, town administrator, make sure that goes to the Board of Selectmen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think those are the changes that we needed to do. It being after or right around 8 o'clock, there are still a lot of changes to be made in the warrant. So I think we're better off to wait 2 weeks before we do anything with the warrant. That way I'll be able to get a draft out to everybody maybe a week from now, and we'll have more solid numbers in it. The meeting 2 weeks from now will be pretty much the warrant. The capital plan will be discussed. We have a presentation from the capital plan chairman to help us understand the $2 million that we're going to spend.
Yes.
What else do we need on the meeting? I think we're getting pretty well caught up, getting prepared to meet with the selectmen on, we can do a final budget recommendation, but since we aren't making any changes in the budget and we're voting in favor of every budget that comes along, technically, we don't need to vote the budget in total. But I guess it is one last opportunity that we may want to just have in front of us the actual paper that's the total budget and say, hey, we recommend the budget in total. And that way we'll actually be doing that budget warrant article as a separate item. Beyond there, I have nothing else. Any comments from any members that have not had their comment on the table yet or want to bring up something else or go forward?
I move the finance committee adjourn its Wednesday, March 19th meeting at 7:45 p.m.
Mr. Chair, may I say something quickly?
Certainly.
It's Ken Mullally, Town Treasurer. Earlier in your discussion about the increase in the budget for debt service, I just want to explain what that was. It was simply some debt service that we pay out of the general fund that was actually moved to one of the enterprise funds accidentally in the process of the budgeting. I knew that it was wrong that night. I just didn't know how to fix it the night that we discussed my budget. So you incorrectly stated that I gave the wrong numbers. I actually didn't give the wrong numbers. Those numbers were given to me incorrectly. So just wanted to clear the record.
My apology.
Add it to the list.
I
Add
guess,
it to the list.
I guess that what that does bring up though, if we've approved the right numbers for water and wastewater.
So I believe the finance director has corrected that. So it really was a matter of just moving anything that was Mass Clean Water Trust into the enterprise fund just by mistake, and it came out of the general fund.
So we'll plan on double checking the water and wastewater budgets next meeting too.
I didn't think we'd be talking.
Moved off topic.
Second.
All in favor?
There you go.
Carl,
Aye. Marcia, aye.
David, aye.
Derek, I.
I missed what we're voting on. Are we ending the meeting?
Yes.
Go home.
Okay, sure, aye,
Stay
definitely,
home.
yes.